Here is an EOA Live Grande story.
So, hey, Eastern Oregon Alive, thanks for being with us today. And it's a pleasure to be with Greg Barreto. And today is February the 26th, 2020. Stumble with that. And Greg is an Oregon State Representative, and they made the decision as a group to walk out yesterday, the Senate the day before. And Greg, I appreciate you taking the time to spend a few minutes with me and tell me the story. Tell me what kind of led to the point where you guys walked out.
So a little bit of history on this. This is basically the same bill as 2020 from last year when the Senate walked out. 11 members of the Senate walked out at the end of the long session last year, and then came back, renegotiated some bills, voted some in, but this one was killed. And I think at that point, everyone knew it was coming back in the short session. Now, the short session is just a 5-week session. It's not a session to run stuff like this. Matter of fact, there were a lot of holes in this bill here that we offered amendments to, and they rejected every single amendment that was offered. This came down to a vote on Monday in the Ways and Means Committee. Again, Republicans offered, I think, 3 or 4 amendments that would have softened the bill. But the main thing was the amendment, most important amendment, was to refer it to the voters, because this is a huge tax. This is almost $1 billion tax. The first year raises gas prices 22 cents a gallon, raises natural gas 12% on residencies, up to 24% on businesses. So it's going to be a huge energy tax that will hit every single Oregonian. It will hit rural Oregon the most, because people out in rural Oregon, they don't make as much money as they do in Portland or in the Portland metro area. So it really does hit the outside of Oregon. And so 27 counties wanted this bill referred to the voters, and the Democrats basically said no. And not only did they say no, but it would not have passed out of the committee Monday morning had not the Senate President Courtney, step in and be the extra vote that actually sent it out of committee. And so it would be second read on the floor one day and then third read the next day and voted on it. So the Senate had made this extremely clear, the Senate Republicans had made this extremely clear that if this thing is voted out, we are walking. And that was the message actually almost from the beginning of this session. So it was no surprise, that the Republican Senate walked. We were then in a position to show solidarity. Now, last year when they walked, we didn't walk. We didn't have enough of members that wanted to walk, and would have left too many back in Salem to where it wouldn't have made a difference. And this is called denying quorum. And so when they meet on the floor, the House needs at least 40 people, 40 legislators present to give quorum. On the Senate side, they need at least 14. And so the Senate denied quorum on Monday morning. Yesterday morning when we left, we denied quorum on the House side, and we are all fugitives right now on the run. So, and most of us headed out of state. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But this is what they call the tyranny of the majority. When the majority party, which is now has a super majority in both chambers, in the House and in the Senate, they can run whatever they want through that building, and they have done that. It isn't just the cap and trade, which is the most egregious and certainly big enough to leave Salem on, but they're also running this 4005 gun bill, where all the guns need to be put in safes, and you can't have one by your bedside at night. So it takes away your idea of self-defense, and so this is a big one. I've probably gotten just as many emails on that I have on cap and trade. And then they also had a pesticide bill that they ran through in the short session to stop this chlorpyrifos chemical from being sprayed. It's a pesticide that they put on, just about 75% of the things grown in Oregon, that another huge bill to affect agriculture. You know, this bill here will affect agriculture. This bill will affect businesses. This bill will take away jobs in Oregon. So the whole premise here was, look, the majority party did not want this thing sent to the voters because they knew the voters would reject it. And so they felt like it was their responsibility to vote this thing past, regardless of what the voters wanted, regardless of what the Republicans asked for. We're going to cram this thing through. We're going to shove it down your throat, and you're going to swallow it. So that's kind of the tone of the building there when these kind of bills come about. So I've been talking for a while, so you can ask me anything else. And
that's good. So talk about the mechanism. So is it the emergency clause that they're taking out? Talk about how in your guys' mind, how does it get before the voters, and what are they doing to take it away from the voters?
Yeah, so this emergency clause that we have in Oregon, a lot of states don't have this. I think there's only four or five states that have the emergency clause, but that does prevent the bill from going to the voters to have a vote, it's a referendum, to have it referred to the voters. And so that process, if it doesn't have an emergency clause, it's like Measure 66 and 67, if everyone remembers that one. And that's the one that got me into politics. But if it doesn't have an emergency clause, then they can refer it to the voters with a certain number of signatures right after the not the close of the session, but when the governor signs the actual bill. And so with the emergency clause, it makes it much more difficult to do that. And I can't remember how many votes it takes to do that, but with the emergency clause, it basically makes it extremely difficult to get to the voters.
So then the point, you guys, the Republicans' point of conversation with them has been, hey, if this is such a great thing for Oregon, why don't you take the emergency clause off so that if the public wants to vote on it, they can, and they have refused to do that.
That's correct. And, you know, and Senator Burdick made the argument, I think, that went around the state, you know, that she didn't think the voters were smart enough to figure this one out, you know, and so that elitism right there that I think carries with the party in control is kind of the message that goes out that, look, we're the smart people here to figure out what's best for you, and we'll do what we think is right. But in fact, this is just an absolute money grab. You know, this will not do anything to reduce carbon emissions. It brings in more money into the government. It creates 200 more jobs. It has unelected bureaucrats running this system. Nobody knows where this money that they extract from the people would even be spent, but it will be spent. And then there's no transparency as far as who even buys these credits. You know, what companies are getting a pass on this, and what companies have to actually pay for it. You know, and there's just a whole lot of unanswered questions around this whole bill that it shouldn't be passed. Matter of fact, LFO, the Legislative Fiscal Office, said it would take us 3 to 4 months just to figure out a fiscal on this, and they didn't want to wait for that. You know, these are the things where you say, is it crammed through? Yeah, it's crammed through. I mean, this is something that is just, it's almost illegitimate that the system even works like this.
Okay, so give us, and I know we've talked about the cap and trade bill quite a bit, but give me an example of how this would affect people in Eastern Oregon if it went through. You know, what are the potential problems with it?
So if this went through, again, I think I mentioned that it would raise gas taxes in Oregon 22 cents the first year.
Wow.
Going up to $3 a gallon by 2050. It would raise natural gas that everyone heats with their homes. It would raise that, I think, 12% the first year, and up to 24% on businesses. We run in our manufacturing plant out in Grande, we have a powder coating system. So all of the metal that we produce out there that goes into machinery, we run it through a powder coating system. It goes through an oven that's fired by natural gas. And I can't remember how hundreds of thousands of dollars we pay for the natural gas, but that then increases your cost of doing business. Businesses, one, they'll just start looking for other places to manufacture. You know, and the handwriting is on the wall already in Oregon that, look, in the future, this probably isn't the state that you want to set up your business in. Now, the other thing it will do is raise electrical costs. You know, all the electricity that we get beyond hydro, windmills or solar, you know, would then be taxed also. So electricity bills go up. The cost of living goes up for every Oregonian, and with that, there's a ripple effect in businesses to where when they pay more, their cost is more, they charge you more. And so it doesn't just affect you at the pump or on your electricity bill or on your natural gas bill. It affects everything you purchase in Oregon, because all of those businesses also cost more to run them. So that's the gist, is there's always a ripple effect.
And so what do you say to those people that say, well, but we're reducing our carbon footprint. This is good for the environment. You know, I guess the question, does it make enough difference to justify, does it make any difference? Does it make enough difference to justify the cost?
Yeah, so that's what they came up with last year. It's 0.013 of 1%, you know, that it makes a difference as far as the carbon that Oregon puts out right now as far as worldwide carbon. I mean, I think it was immeasurable, you know, infinitesimal. I mean, whatever word they use, it was nothing, you know. But to take that and say, but we're doing this to make a dent or to be a leading example for the world to follow, is just ludicrous, you know. And it will not reduce any carbon. What it does do is it brings dollars in, and then those dollars, wherever they're spent, they figure that that justifies it. But you know, when you look at and I sent out a newsletter, I think last week, on sequestration. You know, how much carbon does all the trees and the plants take in Oregon? And when you figure that carbon sequestration, which is not in their model, when you figure out carbon sequestration, we're already at 2035 standards right now, so that we don't even qualify, you know, on the world, whatever the world model is for carbon output. We've already met that level in 2035. So to not take sequestration and put it into the model is like saying, which we already do, we say, well, we can't include hydro in our electricity portfolio, you know, for renewable energy. You know, I mean, if you have a model and you don't include everything in that model, the model is flawed. And so right now, our model is completely flawed. And in California has proven already that they've had cap and trade. It does nothing to reduce the amount of carbon output.
So then, to break that down in just really plain language, it sounds like Oregon already does really well with its carbon footprint because of the hydro. Compared to other states, we're already doing really well. But in order to change that picture so that it doesn't appear that we're doing well, they've subtracted some of those things and said, hey, this is the real need. It's a false need because it doesn't account for the things that are good that are being done. It doesn't account for hydropower, it doesn't account for sequestration. Then if you take those things out, then it makes the need to reduce carbon greater, the appearance of it. And so, I mean, does that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, it's a skewed model that doesn't give an accurate outcome.
Okay. Or it doesn't give an accurate assessment to begin with. That's
correct.
Okay. All right.
And you can make up a model whatever you want. I mean, you can make up a model to produce at the end whatever you want to show, and that's
okay.
And that's what they do.
Okay. So, how would you respond? Because I mean, I watched some of the new stuff yesterday, and you know, for those people that say, "Come on, Republicans, do your job. You've been hired to represent the people, the population," and I don't know. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I say this is one tool that we have in the toolbox, and one of the last ones that we have in the minority party there to prevent legislation that's bad for Oregon. And so what I would say to them is, look, you say, we're throwing away the Democrat model, and we're saying, no, you're not transparent in giving to the people. You're not allowing the people to even have a voice. This is an abuse of power that you are showing in forcing something down the throats of the Oregon people and not allowing them to have a say in it. And so that's the other side of that is, look, we're not, the only reason we're objecting to this is because we know the people don't want this. And the people that do want it are in the majority party in the legislature, and they, with their numbers, can force this stuff down the throats of Oregonians.
Okay, thank you. So has this been done by them before? I mean, is this a new thing that you guys invented, or is this something, yeah, talk about that a little.
As far as is what a new thing?
Like walking out. I mean, it seems kind of like a nuclear option a little bit. And
it is. The Democrats, I mean, back when Republicans were in control, the Democrats walked out, I think, in 2002 or something like that. I didn't go back that far, but this is, it is one of those options that we have left. And it's an option that doesn't always work all the time, because in a long session, if they run this bill at the beginning of the session, like low carbon fuels, like they did in 2015, you would have another 6 months or 5.5 months of session, to where you'd be skipping out for 5.5 months, going living somewhere else in the country, and that doesn't make it feasible. Last year when the Senate walked, it was right towards the end of the long session, and that was an option that worked. And so this option doesn't always work, but it is there and it is available. And now in the short session here, where we have, as of Monday, we had 2 weeks left of the session, and then it has to legally end. It gives you that option, and it's a viable option. So it's one of the last tools we have as a super minority party, because they can pass with their super majority anything that they want. And so it is one of the last resorts we have in our toolbox.
Well, thank you for that explanation. So just one more thing for people that might not understand what it's like to be a representative as far as payment, or far as, I mean, it's not a full-time job. Talk a little bit about, because people probably a lot of them don't even understand that. Talk about, I don't know, the pay, talk about what does this require from your life to do this, and does it pay for itself? I don't know, just talk about that a little bit.
Okay, first of all, it is an honor and it is a privilege to do this job, and to be voted in by the people of your district to represent them is really a great honor. The pay that we get, and when I first started this, we were paid, I think, $21,000 a year to do this job. Now I think after minimum wage went up and pay equality and things like that, we're now making, I think, $31,000 a year. So a substantial increase from $21,000, but still $31,000 a year. Is it a part-time job? No, it really is a full-time job. I mean, there's really never a time when you don't get up in the morning and think about what's going on in the state and your responsibilities as a legislator. So when I'm driving from Grande to Salem, or Salem to Grande, doing all this windshield time, the thoughts of what you're doing in your legislative responsibilities, it never leaves your mind, and so it's not just a matter of time that you may be doing something else. Your mind is always processing things you should do, things you shouldn't do, things you should say, speaking engagements, newsletters. I mean, and just representing, and meetings that you have really all over the state. So they say it's a part-time job, but it takes time, it takes mind time out of your day almost every day. Certainly during the session, whether it's the long session or the short session, it is a full-time job over in Salem, and sometimes those are long days. But it's been a great experience to do this. It would be a greater experience if we were in the majority. I would love to be able to pass policy that positively, I think, affects the future of Oregon, rather than trying to play defense all the time and defend against these policies that, clear and simple, they will not provide a good future for jobs in Oregon or for the people. So that's part of the frustrating thing. The other part of this job is you have to keep your sense of humor. If you can't laugh at yourself, and if you can't laugh at things, then they start to grind away at you, and your hair starts to turn gray, which mine already is, but it turns gray faster. So again, and the other thing about this job, it's been extremely nice to have my family alongside me, to have my wife alongside me. She's my chief of staff, helping me navigate some of this stuff, although she spends more time with the Oregon Republican Party than really being my chief of staff, so I don't pay her very much. But it's been a good I think experience for both of us, and I've been glad to do it.
You don't pay me anything.
Oh, I don't pay her anything, she said.
I understand that. Tanya comes in and does the books every day after working a full-time job, and
Yeah.
every once in a while she says, well, are you going to take me out to dinner? I need to be paid today. Yeah. So, yeah, I hear that. Well, but the bottom line is, though, is that you're fortunate in that you have a business that is able to run without you. You could never live on $31,000 a year, and so this, I mean, there's certainly some sacrifice in being able and having to do that. Yeah.
Brent, that's a good point. And so for 4 or 5 of the years I've been over in Salem, I've been in leadership, and the responsibilities of leadership are always looking to the next election. Going out and trying to find people in those swing districts that you can recruit to increase your numbers, and then going out and trying to get the funding to be able to fund their campaigns and bring them across the finish line. And that has been, recruitment has been an extremely, probably one of the hardest things to do in this job, because as you said, this is not a job that pays a full-time salary, and yet it's kind of a full-time job. It's hard to find people that are willing or capable of doing this, that don't have a family, or they have a young family, or even in their middle age when their kids are in high school and they want to be a part of their high school years when they're in sports and things. So, and then you get to the end, where you can get some of the older folks like me, but then people are looking forward to heading to Phoenix for the winter.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to dial in and to find someone who's willing to serve, who's capable of serving, who wants to run the gauntlet of a swing district campaign, because they get beat up, and so that's part of the problem. I've been blessed, as far as, you're right, I have another, I have income that offsets what I make in the legislature, and I'm very fortunate that. I'm also fortunate that when I was asked to run, I had a business that was pretty much running by itself, with key employees that have just completely taken it to a new level since I've been gone. I'm a little embarrassed to come back and say, gee, can I have it back? So I have truly been blessed prior to this job, during this job, and I hope it continues. But this is the position that Oregon is in right now, is if we do not change the balance in the legislature, then we will be faced with things like this, like cap and trade, or whatever the next thing that comes along, that will pave the future for Oregon, and it won't be good as far as what it's going to cost the Oregon people.
So to kind of sum up, they have a super majority, and normally there would kind of be at least a gentleman relationship where they would take into they would listen to your concerns, and they would listen to your suggestions. But at this point, the relationship is they're not even listening to you. And so this is, in your mind, this was kind of the only choice that you guys had.
That's correct. You talked about a nuclear option last time. Well, for us, there was no other option.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all righty. Well, hey, thank you. Do you want to, so when is your last, you've decided not to run, when is the finish line for you? And do you want to give a shout out to some people that maybe have kind of helped you throughout the way?
Well, first of all, I'd shout out to my wife who got me into this in the first place and has been alongside me the whole time and been very involved and even helped with this video this morning. So she has done that. When I thought about running, I pulled in a team at work and asked them about it, told them I felt very confident that they could take the job there and run it without me or the business. And they were all in. They said, hey, we'd be glad to do that. When you win, we'll help you pack. And they shipped me off to Salem. So it's been fun to just see all of those holes basically filled up. And then I have been blessed by many in the community, you know, just as far as encouragement. This morning I had 180 emails on my email list from last night, you know, and I think over probably 60% of them were just thank you for doing this, thank you for walking, thank you for doing your best to protect us from the tyranny of the majority. And so, you know, all of that encouragement, and I don't know if I receive a lot more than everyone else, but I tell you what, I don't get that many negative emails. I get a few, but for the positive emails that I get, or phone calls, or just a text, you know, from people in the communities that I serve, it has been extremely encouraging, and it certainly makes you feel good about spending a portion of your life serving the people in this capacity, because that is what it is. It's a window of time in your life that you can give back and serve the people to the best of your capability. Well, and I've been glad to do that.
Well, thanks so much, and I appreciate having a strong voice, having a strong voice, and you represent Eastern Oregon, and that is because it seems like we're left out of the picture a ton. So,
and rural Oregon takes more of the brunt from Salem than anyone else. You're exactly right.
You know, and it's kind of funny because as I've interviewed, we're in the process of interviewing candidates that are running for different positions and so on and so forth. And when I talk to them about the rural urban divide and what they can do to help that, in somebody who is rural, or excuse me, somebody who is urban, their idea is that they just want they say, well, there's really not that much difference between us. But in their head, it seems like they're saying, we just want you rural folks to become more like us urban folks. so yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, there's not much division between us as long as you just become like us, you know. Yeah. And
it's not just become like us, it's think like us.
Right,
you know?
Right, yeah.
You have to process like us. Yeah, and you can take this bill that we walked out on as kind of an example of that, you know, that look, you can't do this for yourself, so we have to do it for you, and we have to show you the right direction that we need to take. And that's the big problem.
Well, and regardless of what the issue is, that's flawed policy, you know. And I mean, it doesn't matter what you put in that, what subject you put in that hole, if you're not willing to let the public be aware and you're not willing to be fully transparent, then, and it doesn't matter what party, if you're not willing to do that, then it's flawed. That process is flawed. So, all right, well, hey, thanks so much, Greg, for taking the time.
You know, I don't know if I ever answered your question too. You asked me how long I was going to be in this, and the job lasts until next January. And so I'll be in it for the remainder of this year. We'll have legislative days throughout the year where you go over to Salem for a week and go through policy that will probably be coming up in the next legislative session. But until whoever wins the election this November gets sworn in January, I still hold the position.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us from an undisclosed location. And yeah, appreciate it. And have a good day. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it.